All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for spending lunch here. All right, I will jump right in. A quick show of hands before I do. Who has touched an underdoor tool before? Maybe 50%, that's awesome. What about lockpicks? Better. What about who's actually gone in the field and done some type of physical pen test assessment? Awesome. All right, this is very helpful. So I want to start with a key question before I jump in. Raise your hand, and there's no right answer. This is not a trick question. Raise your hand if you think red teams should recommend fixes when they're done. Awesome. Raise your hand if you are brave enough to say that they shouldn't recommend fixes. They should just turn out vulnerabilities. That's a very valid, that works at some companies. There's great teams that fix stuff, and a red team just does vulnerabilities. Awesome. All right, I don't think I'm going to have to convince you of very much today. So we are going to cover a couple things, but the goal of today is to talk through turning the things that you find, the vulnerabilities, into actual improvements at the company. But my goal is to help everyone have as much fun as possible. So very quickly, I have done red teaming, physical red teaming mostly, for about 15 years. Did a lot of investigations. More recently gone into kind of counter corporate espionage, so seeing what the bad folks, the corporate spies are doing and trying to counter that, which helps me learn new tactics frequently, which I enjoy. I've worked at a few companies, consulting and internally building red teams, and that's it. So there's two approaches that I often see with physical red teaming. There's we're playing an adversary, we're emulating an adversary, so we're coming at it from an adversarial perspective. And so you come in and you just, wreck the security team's shit, and then you turn around and drop all these vulnerabilities and kind of walk away. And everybody has a bad day, and they are defensive, and they do not want to fix it. This, happens on the cyber infosec side regularly, but even more so on the physical side, because a lot of physical security practitioners are not used to being red teamed, are not used to being tested. There's also the approach where you come in, you identify vulnerabilities proactively with them, you get their buy-in up front, and at the end of the day, you help them prevent something, you make them look good. That's going to be a key thing I come back to. And they get to prevent something proactively. They get to look good. The company has better security, and you get to test more. And so the goal is to really move towards that, especially in the physical space. So this may be a little controversial, but all the fun things, the technical skills, the underdoors tool, the lock picks, the evading IR, that's all one hyper-focused part of being a red teamer, a physical red teamer, and it makes you a really good hacker, but it doesn't make you a professional hacker. And so I'm going to cover some of the technical skills and how to help mitigate it, but the goal is to help you do more of that by being good at it and bringing it into the workplace. So there's three types of skills to be a professional physical red teamer. The foundation, many of you have kind of the perspective, if you're already at DEF CON, of what adversarial thinking is and how to approach it. The technical skills, and then which I'll cover different TTPs to get into buildings, and then the professional ones, how to actually do more of this and make the improvements. Red teams fill in the gaps between all the other security teams. So if someone's putting a 4G-enabled implant into an ATM network in order to bypass, endpoint protection, firewall, that fun stuff, that ends up being a physical-enabled cyber attack. I think that happened last month. What if someone uses a new AI deepfake vector, right? The AI safety and integrity team is not testing if people are going to use it for deepfakes. They're trying to make sure it's resistant to the latest jailbreak attacks. Physical security, keeping the office safe. Cybersecurity is doing everything that they do. And red teams help fill in the gaps and find the things in between these teams, what they might not be thinking about or what they might be missing. This is an example. We could not show client information, obviously, but this is a recreation of a real-world instance where you combine decent cell phone cameras. They're getting better every day with AI lip reading. And you can actually do surveillance. You don't need an $80,000 laser mic anymore. You need a $20 lens, 30-time optical lens to put on an iPhone or a Galaxy. And you can suddenly spy on someone on a meeting through a window from a block or two away. This is low-hanging fruit, easy example, but it had like 85% accuracy. It had enough that I could extract what I needed from a board meeting, from a conversation. Thank you for being the participant over here for this one. And you can see the red is where it didn't get it right, but it was pretty close, and it was accurate. So this is a new threat vector that really isn't being covered, and there's dozens of these with AI and with other technology. That physical security, I mean, I consider myself solidly a physical security professional, and I don't want to talk shit about physical security, but we're not thinking about this stuff. Cybersecurity, a little bit more, but really not applying it to the physical space. And so really, I will encourage everyone to use this time to test physical security and try to get ahead of the TTPs. So I call this the spicy security spectrum. I've seen other talks that have different names for it, but essentially things that 2-3 years ago, AI lip reading, for example, used to be tier 1, only nation states have it. Now, that was maybe like a 90 cents to run and that was because they started charging for the lip reading model. 90 cents and a decent camera, and you can do the same thing that only the NSA or CIA could years ago. And so all these TTPs move their way down the spectrum over time. And I view a red team's role, especially if you're trying to test physical, as trying to stay ahead of these as they move across the spectrum in that direction. All right. A couple more foundational things, and we'll get into some more fun stuff. So in order to test physical, a lot of companies and physical teams will be very resistant to being tested. And so unlike cybersecurity, where there's vulnerability scans, you're getting pinged and attacked constantly, there's very few physical attacks, people trying to break in for corporate espionage, real espionage, to steal a bunch of laptops. Like the relative ratio of physical security attempts and incidents is so tiny compared to cyber that a lot of physical security teams, a lot of companies don't know if their physical security works. Might just be theater. It often is. And so there's two ways to know if it works. Either we test it as security folks or an adversary tests it. And the consequences are way higher if an adversary does. As a red teamer, this slide hurts a little bit, but I will say I don't recommend red teaming as the first line of defense. I always recommend, there's a lot that goes into physical security, but start with the one I highlighted, an adversarial walkthrough. If you're in like banking, you can call it a due diligence walkthrough. Name it whatever you want to get people excited. But instead of hiring a red team or putting all the things that go into covertly attacking, go find the facilities person, a cybersecurity person, et cetera, and just do an overt walkthrough. Use an underdoor tool. Use a couple different things that you've practiced and show them the vulnerabilities. The stakes are lower. They will be more excited because they actually get to go hands-on and be like, well, if I can learn this in 90 seconds, an adversary or a kid on YouTube can figure it out, and then they can come film their urban adventure stuff. I've seen more and more of that. The urban adventure folks that like to explore different offices, film themselves using some of these tools. And that's a bad look, right? If you spend a bunch of money on physical security and some kid went on YouTube, learned how to use an underdoor tool and is now in your server room or on your rooftop, that's not good. And if you have certifications or if regulators see that, if you're in a regulated environment, it can cause a lot of issues. So there's surprising reputational damage to some of these very low-hanging tactics. So yeah, I always recommend start with a vulnerability walkthrough. You'll see I'm changing the name. I change it for whatever makes sense for the client. Have 5 to 10 different tactics that are your favorite ones that you're good at, that you think will work. Practice them and bring people along. Because then 6 months later when you red team, hopefully you're finding new things that people don't know about, and that they've fixed a lot of these. So if you actually want to go and test physical security at your company, or if you want to do it via consulting, I'm going to cruise through 10 steps to get it off the ground. The first one is threat model. Before you get buy-in, before you do anything else, understand like, why are you doing this? who is going to attack you, what's the threat actor, the threat vector, what tactics might they use. Make it realistic. You don't want to take a helicopter and land on the roof of a McDonald's and steal the safe. There's a great talk yesterday about how to get into safes that McDonald's uses, or other companies. And so have realistic ones where by the time you show up and say, hey, I found a vulnerability, and they say, cool, why do I care? You're going to come back to this. You'll come back to the threat model often. There's different ways to do it. I will say lots of research goes into it, but the only thing people care about is if you have a nice graphic that puts it all in one place, because people don't want to read long text. Then listen. By the time you end up showing up and proposing a red team, you don't want to say, I think we should do this because I think this threat actor is going to target us and I'm worried. You want to use their language. You want to understand what leadership's concerned about, combine that with your threat model, and you will be golden. They will buy in a lot faster. But to do that, you have to talk to people, listen to what their concerns are, figure out the scope. What do you actually want to do on the test? Propose the engagement, even if you don't have to ask for permission, right? If you're empowered to go do this, ask for permission or at least input anyways, because then when you show up with vulnerabilities, whoever gave you that input is going to be a lot more bought in. Do use the threat model for the proposal, prepare, do all the admin stuff, have a letter of authorization. Make sure that whoever is giving you the authorization to break into their building is authorized to do that. The coal fire incident was an example of lack of clarity around who has what authority. And I've seen multiple other cases, including some that we've been on, where right before you go in, you ask a final question. It's like, hey, do you have the authority to do this? Or we'll regularly get told, yeah, we give our landlord on the ground floor keys to our office in case of an emergency. Go break into their office and see how secure it is because we rely on them. Straight up a crime. If you do not have permission to break into a space, and if a random person is saying, go commit this crime, it's still a crime unless they're authorized to allow you to do that. It may seem silly. It is silly. It's sometimes ridiculous, but I run into it frequently. Quick question, yeah.
Make sure that 3 names that you have on that authorization letter when the cops show up are available. We'll actually find them. If we test the numbers and they're not available, we'll find them $10,000 not being available.
I like that. Yeah, definitely do that. I over communicate. So I text, there's a signal group. I text constantly. And if someone doesn't respond before I'm doing an after hours, we're going to pause until the person actually responds. So that's a great call out. There's a good but controversial report, after action report, and there's a lot of stuff that went into the coal fire after action. So if you're interested in kind of the safety part, not part of this talk, but very important, definitely go read that. Practice your tactics. This has saved us a few times. Make sure you're not trying to use an underdoor tool for the second or third time when you're actually in the field, because you'll be 10 times more nervous than you were at Physical Security Village. Go and execute the operation. Know when to stop. Sometimes it's a capture the flag type thing. You want to get into the COO's office, leave a card and leave. And sometimes you want to escalate until you're caught to actually see what the detection threshold is. And then you're testing not only whether they can detect you, but what the response is once they do. So figure out when you're scoping exactly when to stop the operation. All right, this is the single most important thing. When you are done with the operation, within the next hour, do an immediate debrief and de-escalation, especially if you were social engineering. If you show up and you talk your way past a security guard, lie your way in, go and talk to everyone that you interacted with. Say, hey, this was a red team assessment. Everything's okay. No one's getting in trouble. No one who messed up, their name's not going in the report, anything like that. But I want to understand kind of what you were thinking as this happened. So talk me through, I tried really hard, I lied, I put a lot of pressure on you. What went through your head? What would have helped you stop me in the future? That is gold. That's the single most kind of useful thing you can do for the security team, because frankly, you are more creative in terms of physical security than a lot of the people that have to fix this stuff. And so taking time to do the root cause analysis is essential. All right. report your findings, communicate, demonstrate as much as possible. There's a million teams that constantly send reports up. You get to do something cool, which is have video. You get to take people out and demonstrate it. So use that to your advantage. And then follow up, promote positive change. When you see things that are fixed, go test them, put the videos side by side, and then showcase to whoever does the security budget how they're actually spending money to buy down risk. But making people look good is going to get you so much further, especially in the physical security space. All right. Let's get to the TTPs that you'll actually use. Physical security is more than just protecting an office or a data center. There's a lot that goes into even a medium or large company. These might be separate teams. These might be one team with 6 different responsibilities, but there's a lot that goes into physical security. And so if you are truly testing it, make sure you pick different aspects of it, not just is the latch on the server room door good? But if you want to test, is the physical security program working? Pick mail screening, for example, and then figure out how to test it. You can buy all this stuff online. It's fake. It's inert. Sorry, it's not fake. All the components are real, but the explosives are typically inert. There's multiple websites that do this. This is a government contractor. You can buy a pager. That's came onto the website in the last few months. I will note, lessons learned, obviously don't ship this directly to your business that has x-rays or canines in order to get it. You kind of have to ship it somewhere else, to a P.O. box or to your house. When I shipped it to my house, it got delayed, funny enough. I assume it set off some detections. They don't put anything on the outside of the package. It's just in a big box. And so I went out of town, and then obviously the day I went out of town, they delivered it. So I had an awkward call with my neighbor who worked for the same company. I sent him a screenshot of what I bought, a big Pelican case full of fake bombs, and said, can you bring this in your house so someone doesn't steal it off my doorstep and cause a major national incident? And so he did, but then I had to, CC his manager about why he has this Pelican case full of explosives in his house. So don't do that, but figure out how to get that stuff without shipping it to yourself. There's plenty of talks on physical focused OSINT, so I will add just a little bit here. One of my favorite things, even if it's not easily available, there's almost always videos or 3D tours that you can use to find the types of badge readers. You can use it to find the specific doors that you want to target. In this case, you'll see these double doors. You can actually see on this 3D rendering, you can see the gap between the doors, and I can measure it, and it's about 3 inches, so I know exactly what tool I need to bring to get through the doors before I even step foot on site. There's different kind of Wi-Fi things if you want to take more approaches. And then finding vendors is awesome for social engineering. Lately, I have been using, especially for social engineering, PIM eyes or other facial recognition. People still don't know that adversaries are increasingly using facial recognition. Or you can use Freedom of Information Act or PACER, which costs like 10 cents a page, or Recap, which is free and they OCR'd all the text. But if it's a good sized company, you can usually find whistleblower lawsuits or some type of legal documentation that has sensitive company information in it that is available. So look through public records when you can. All right, surveillance. So there's all sorts of ways to do surveillance. Top right is the old school way. You think of a PI sitting in a car with a camera or binoculars. It is fun to put on a ghillie suit and crawl through the grass and spy on something. Probably not realistic anymore, but you do you, figure out what makes the most sense. At this point, most companies have parking lots, and if you show up in a parking lot with a tripod and a camera, you're just walking at a high, very sensitive government building filming, someone's gonna come question you. But if you park a car, a Tesla, whatever, in a parking lot with a dash cam, you have a bunch of cameras, 360, you can start uploading that footage, and you can leave it there as long as you want, within reason. Or you can do what GoTech 7, they have some wild covert cameras. This is 36-time optical zoom, even more digital, about 36 hours worth of battery. And it's just a headrest, right? You can get a dash cam that's like 30 optical zoom, looks exactly like a normal dash cam, but Great for surveillance. You can get different lenses to actually see through windows better depending on your target, but you can do a lot without physically being there these days. Recon, figure out obviously badge readers and technology you need to bring, and you can order all sorts of clothing from different websites and walk right in. We had one recently where you got a Verizon shirt and walked right into a very large city's police station's server room, who didn't even have Verizon as a vendor. But when you confidently walk in and they say, we don't have Verizon, you're like, no, yeah, you do. They'll let you in. And so, yeah, Verizon absolutely sells their employee line to the public, so you can get plenty of Verizon shirts. It's very easy and cheap, not like totally super cheap, but like surprisingly cheap to rent a bucket truck, get a magnet, throw it on the side. I've never once been questioned driving around in a bucket truck. They'll let you in anywhere. You can pop right onto the roof quite easily. All right, quick caveat, traveling with gear. Be safe and smart about this. The one thing I'll say is if you're bringing a ton of gear, especially to a sensitive area, I print a page on letterhead that says, here's who I am, this is red team gear to test security, here's a business card stapled to it. Like some poor TSA person's gonna like look through, they have 30 seconds to figure out, are you trying to blow something up or not? And if you give them a really easy explanation about what all this super suspicious shit is, they will let it go, package it back up. I have gone to very denied countries like Singapore, Israel, etc., with a lot of gear and never had a problem. Consider shipping stuff ahead if you want as well. All right. There's a bunch of talks, and most of this exists in Physical Security Village, so you're going to see me go fast because I want to focus on how to mitigate a lot of this stuff. But these are the four, outside of social engineering, which works most of the time, these are the four tactics that'll get me into most buildings. Underdoor tool, canned air, different type of latch attacks, and ESP keys. So underdoor tool, there's Physical Security 101, another Physical Security Village talk. Definitely check that out. But it works very well in the US, also most other countries. You can do it from the outside. I like to take the case off my phone and slide it under or get a little device. It makes it a lot easier, or you can get really, really good at it. Either option. Canned air, I have some over here. You're gonna see. This works? Awesome. So canned air, if you haven't seen the attack, turn it upside down. You see it just shoots a cloud of cold air. Actually, I can probably talk. It's not that big of a room. These passive infrared readers, they just look for clouds of air that are different temperatures than the ambient temperature. That's cold air. It sees a cloud of cold air. It's going to trigger motion and open it. Lots of different mitigations for that, but the majority of the cheap access, and by cheap, I mean you'll see them almost everywhere. They'll let you into many doors with canned air, little straw in between, etc. Bunch of different latch attacks. I'm not going to get into them. An ESP key or a adversary in the middle attack. This works very well for external readers before you don't even need to go in the building. You can usually apply them in 2 minutes or less on weekend wires. All it does, if you're not familiar, actually quick show of hands, who is familiar with an ESP key? So a fair amount of you. So it's, adversary in the middle. So weekend is just clear text, ones and zeros going through the wire. When you swipe your badge, it goes to the door controller, sends a bunch of ones and zeros. The door controller says approved or not approved, and then it sends it back to the door and opens it or doesn't open it. This little chip, I have one in my backpack if anyone wants to look later. You push it onto the wires, little vampire clamps. It reads the ones and zeros as it goes through the wires, and then it broadcasts it wirelessly to your phone. And what can you do with that? First, you can clone the badge if you're more advanced, or if you're less advanced, you can just hit replay on your phone and it'll inject those same exact ones and zeros into the wires, and the door will pop right open. You do not need to be technical to do this. There's a wonderful web app. There's a lengthy manual on several websites of how to use these. They are quite easy to do. And so we'll talk through some mitigation tactics. Door shims, again, poorly aligned latches tend to lead to this. Double door tools. Again, I have one over here if anyone wants to look at it, but you can see you push it through and hit the crash bar. Let's try that again. There we go. I think you can play with all these at the one of the villages downstairs, but these are some other common tactics that you can use. They'll get you into many buildings. The commercial door hook is newer, and I really like it. It works for even some decently high security because there's a little metal bar. You just got to get in there, pull it, and it'll retract the latch. This friend Deviant, he will just pop the, you'll see, pop the hinges right out. Very common to have external hinges. It's better, obviously, when you put either security screws into the hinges or internally hinge the doors. That's ideal, but you can see just how fast you can pull a door right off a frame. I try not to do it because it gets destructive, and you'll see a little later on, I like to keep everybody happy. Another deviant example, if you post keys, if you ever see someone with a clear key box in the lobby, you can show them this example. It's quite easy to figure out the bidding of a key and order it online, 3D print it, recreate it, cut it yourself. There's all sorts of options, but you can absolutely recreate a key and just a physical key and use it if you can get a high quality picture of it. Common keys, these are excellent. You can buy keys that unlock most things. Those shred bins that are in the offices that don't actually shred stuff, they just sit there until one of the shred companies comes and picks it up. They're my favorite because from my perspective as an adversary, everyone's looking at documents saying, this is really sensitive. Let's put it all in one place and leave it there and put it behind a commonly keyed, or even if not, an incredibly easy to pick lock. Many of you played with lock picks in the past or have used them. I hate to break it to you, but like in the field, I almost never use lock picking. All these tools are way faster, way less. Everyone knows what a lock pick looks like, and they'll be like, that's suspicious. But if I have this weird fishing hook looking thing under a door, and you're just saying I'm doing door maintenance, nobody has any idea what you're doing. And so I don't actually lock pick outside of shred bins. All those shred bins in the offices, super easy to open, harder to close. So if you're going to start screwing with it, keep that in mind. You're going to spend like 2 minutes opening it, 15 closing it. But those are really the only time I use lock picking. And it's a wonderful example to show just how easy it is to find all the sensitive stuff. All right, all sorts of ways to do badge cloning. I'm not going to talk a lot about it, but I will show you a quick demo. Can everyone hear me if I talk like this?
Yeah.
All right, just for a second. Video's out. Good point. All right, so this is a long-range reader. It is excellent for stealing people's badges from a distance. A flipper, a Proxmark, all of those are going to need to get, an inch or less away. So this and I left the beep on specifically so you can hear it, but obviously if you're doing covert ops, don't have the beep. But you can see it works from pretty far away and any direction. So if you're walking around with a bag like this or a backpack, you can hear it here. You can hear it, and it'll pick up lots of badges. So if you're walking around DEF CON, in here, it's not quite, but essentially it's a battery and an ESP key. So the same thing, it's broadcasting all these badges, it's still reading. It's broadcasting all of it to my phone, and I can use that. I mean, you can write your own code and have it go to a Proxmark and immediately write it to another badge, so then you have a physical clone. Or you can have it go to a flipper. There's additional steps because it's not on the company's wires, but it is quite a useful tool for gathering badges, especially if you don't know which badge it is. So you can walk through a lobby, grab a bunch of badges, and the most common ones are going to be the ones that work well. So it usually works 2 to 3 feet away. All right, so long distance. There's now pretty good, pretty decent cameras that pretty good cameras that get up to 100-time optical zoom. At this point, that's uncommon. 30 to 50 is pretty common, and it's getting even easier to be able to do surveillance from very far away. I will say these small cameras with like 30, here's a 36-time optical zoom, not very big, or even the newest Galaxies have really good zooms. You can do the AI lip reading. You can add the like 30-time optical zoom lens to any phone and it'll be pretty decent. So you can start capturing keys, you can capture uniforms, all these things from far away. I love gear. Gear is fun. I've had cameras like these in the past. I think I still do somewhere. I just never use them on the job because they are very suspicious. You can use a cell phone at this point and get everything that you need. Again, with the gear, thermal and IR. It's fun, it's useful. I really only use kind of the IR night vision to detect cameras. If I'm targeting something at night, they'll often have IR floodlights. And if you are trying to get into somewhere, this is an example of an IR floodlight. To the naked eye, you can't, it looks dark. You can't see any light. But in the bottom middle, that is what IR floodlight looks like through the IR night vision. Here's a few. Some of them have booths downstairs, so if you want to look at some of these fun tools, you're welcome to. Sorry. You can go back to that for just a second. I've seen Hacker Warehouse, Red Team Tools, and Physical Security Village also has a booth downstairs with some of the physical gear. It is quite easy to get hard hats. I mean, the common saying is you walk in anywhere with a ladder. I've stolen a safe with, let's say, a crypto key worth over $1 billion with a ladder alone. You walked in, people hold the door, you lean a ladder, you set off all these like, oh my God, someone's breaking into this super sensitive room type alarms, but you lean a ladder against the door and saying you're doing door maintenance, not a word. And so ladders, hard hats, they're all awesome, but for some reason, like people will just hold doors open if you have ladders. Or if you have crutches, but you don't want to make life hard for people that actually have crutches. So I try not to use that tactic. But yeah, you can buy all sorts of gear online, like put whatever logo you want, and people will not question you. All right, so actual question for everyone. How do you know if a red team is useful? Like what are the KPIs if you want to use corporate buzzwords? So you try different tactics. You're not repeating the same thing. I like that. Yeah. You find issues and they're corrected. Any other thoughts? Asset management. Yep. Absolutely. I agree with it all. It's changed over my career, like my perspective. I used to say like, find as many vulnerabilities and give it to the people to fix it. And now I'm a little more harsh for the red team. I say like, if people aren't fixing the shit that you're finding, your job is not worthwhile. The company's not getting their money's worth out of having you there. And so let's talk a little bit about that and fixing everything. So double door tool, for example, you put it between the two doors, you turn it, open a crash bar. There's a central astrgal piece of metal that you can put so you're no longer vulnerable, or a latch guard. You can put a security officer inside or outside the door. Either one, like the security officer is going to see someone sticking metal through the door and get pretty concerned and address it. Either one works, right? The security officer, depending on where you are, if you need 24/7, which you probably do because the vulnerability doesn't go away at night, it probably increases. It's going to be $250,000 a year if you want 24/7 security officers somewhere. So think about that. Is it a good investment? Do you want to work on alarms that might trigger if there's not motion on the inside and the door is pushed? Do you want to put additional metal? Because sometimes if you put a latch guard and the doors close in the wrong order, you've created a vulnerability because suddenly the doors are unlocked. These are things that you, as red teamers and hackers, are probably going to think about, and the physical security folks and the facilities folks may not think about. So I'd say even more than cybersecurity, your role in kind of purple teaming and helping fix the physical security stuff should be very high. What about the underdoor tool? Same exact thing. A security guard that sees an underdoor tool that actually knows what it is definitely going to stop you. Or the door sweep at the bottom, the mechanical door sweep, it closes and engages and drops down. That prevents the underdoor tool from working, but you have to route out the bottom of the door, and it tends to shift, the buildings shift over time, and it doesn't work. I think they're awesome, but they take a ton, they're expensive and a lot of maintenance, and you can't have hollow doors. Or you spend $1.25, I think, on a door shroud, and suddenly you can't actually get the wire and the underdoor tool over the door. I've seen like hotels, there's been a bunch of news articles with hotels getting hit with lots of underdoor tools, people breaking into rooms. Some hotels have been just buying hundreds of these and putting them on every room so people can actually get in there. They are ADA compliant and they're very cheap. So like if you can give someone, here's this vulnerability, here's these 8 expensive options to fix it, but here's a really cheap one, people tend to like that. And I guarantee unless someone spends a lot of time researching, they're not going to figure out a cheap way to do this. I'm hesitant to say this, but I have found that different AI models come up with some creative and useful, like ChatGPT will recommend a door shroud most of the time if you ask for cheap ways to mitigate underdoor tools. I'm always hesitant, but I do think it can give you some useful creative ideas on how to fix these things. What about the ESP key? That one's harder. On the left, you can see a company that just moved all the external badge readers inside the glass. So you just have to tap the glass and the door opens. No longer can put something behind the reader. Security guards are expensive, but if they see someone tampering with it, they'll likely call. You can switch to OSDP and encrypt the data between the reader and the door controller, but that's incredibly expensive. You have to pull all the wiring out. You have to switch hardware. There's all sorts of things that go into that. My typical recommendation, right, if it's a high security government building, hopefully they have OSDP or PIV or they've upgraded, but if there's a tamper switch in the reader, just make that a priority. Make sure that it's on, make sure that it works. Sometimes they're physical, if you actually remove it, it'll trigger. Sometimes they're light-based, but just make sure whoever sees alarms prioritizes those. But think through all of these recommendations. When you say someone could put an ESP key in, no one's going to know what to do with that. You kind of have to think through. Don't just hack and create the problem. Help hack the solution and come up with ways that you can fix it. All right, this one's a bit harder. So buildings shift over time. There's all sorts of ways, shims, door latches, and they all rely on poorly aligned latches, poorly aligned latches, the wrong latches, the wrong hardware, etc. One of my favorite things is just go and train, and this is like a teach a man to fish versus catching a fish type scenario. Train the facilities people, the local security people, how to do a door audit. Buy them $25 worth of tools at each site and say every 3 months, go out and try to break into your own building. And if you find a door, file a ticket and you're good to go. It shouldn't take a expensive red team to find some of these things. These are things that it could be incredibly easy for a facilities person, a security guard, et cetera, that has a little bit of training. And so in this case, go teach them how to fish, teach them how to find this low-hanging fruit about doors that are misaligned, that the building's settled and the gap's too big, so suddenly the dead latch isn't actually working. This one's fun. You can get, it's maybe $60 on eBay to get the passive infrared. It's maybe $300 to get really good active infrared. But essentially, you can have it say if someone's not moving towards the door, if there's a cloud of cold air that's moving away from the door, don't trigger. If it's moving towards the door and it's warmer than the air, then you should trigger. But it takes some extra effort and configuration. In Europe, the canned air rarely works because they always have the door release buttons. Those work great unless you put them right next to a big gap and you can just reach in and press them, which I see more than I would like. But I see a lot of the press to release and those prevent. Badge cloning is harder. So I stole this slide from RTA, but there's a few different examples for how to mitigate badge cloning. If you have the highest security badges, it's pretty hard to clone today, but next year at DEF CON, someone will probably drop a new exploit and they'll be able to clone it. You can ask employees, as soon as you leave the office, take your badge off, put it in your backpack. That makes it harder to identify employees and then use the long-range reader to actually clone their badges. You can train people on what to look for when they might be getting their badges cloned or when someone might be using a clone badge to open a door. There's lots of ways to address it, but figure out what's cost effective, because if you have 20,000 or 100,000 people with physical badges, getting them all to turn, trust me when I say this, getting everyone to turn in badges, printing new ones, upgrading the technology just for a new exploit to be dropped 3 months later is a nightmare, and no one will like you if you make them do that. All right, hinge pin, couple different options I already mentioned. Just move the hinges on the inside so you can't access them on the unsecure side. But alternatively, there's security screws that prevent you from actually knocking the pin out easily when the door is closed and locked. We'll skip that. Window film, I can't tell you how often and how easy it is to spy on folks inside buildings. All these companies have like ground floor level public facing windows. Their screens are facing there, and you can just set up outside with a camera on someone's screen or a keyboard and see them typing in their password. And so think about getting good window film, privacy film, and putting that up. It does not mitigate laser microphones or other advanced technology. Laser mics have gotten harder, or some of the technology to mitigate them, like putting white noise and blasting it right into the glass. The newer laser mics can actually defeat that and just filter the noise out. So the best ones actually take voices, randomize it, pump it into the glass so you can't actually hear what's happening inside from the outside. You can just also do a couple panes of glass. There's a few options there. All right, quick note on Red Team superpowers. These are things we can do that no one else can. We get to demonstrate instead of just tell people what the vulnerability is. A VP in charge of budget, or whoever, is going to get 10 different audit reports that say we need to spend money here, here, and here. But they might only get one video from you showing the beginning to end how someone might break in and implant a device in a server room that gives them persistent access. You can also think differently. You can do what I call fictional intel, which is write the story from your threat model, and then have, this person decided to break into our building because they've been attacking our network, and this APT is actually known to do some physical attacks. And all of that might be true, right? You can show real audit logs of your network getting hit, you denying them, and then say, all right, here's where we go into the fictional part. This is what would happen if they attacked us physically. And then you show beginning to end, and you write a really good story. That's going to stick with people. They're going to tell their family about that, or they're going to be more excited about that when it comes budget season. I also recommend gamifying security awareness as much as possible. People like to be rewarded if they do a good job. I don't think punishing people that do a bad job at security works, frankly. But if you have a bunch of swag and you walk around and act suspicious and you give rewards to people that catch you, you start to change the whole culture. Don't go to jail. That makes us all look bad in the physical security testing space. There's one confirmed story with Coalfire and a bunch of other people that have posted stories. I like to collect them, so if any of you have been arrested, feel free to send me a little note, or if you know of a case. I just like to collect them. I have like a public Excel or Google sheet on the website of like lessons learned extracted from other physical red teamers and stories that have been told. And so if anyone wants to look through some lessons learned, you're more than welcome to. But be careful when you're red teaming. We are essentially doing a bunch of criminal acts, and the only reason it's okay is because someone asked us to and gave us a letter that said it is. But I highly recommend being careful. I usually have like 25 slides and all the different laws red teamers are skirting the line on, and they all rely on following your scope and being authorized to do it. All right, 2 really quick things. Two really important things is good relationship and good perspective. That's what's going to land you enough credibility to make change and do more red teaming. This often happens, if you social engineer or attack security and they get mad about it, try to mend those fences as fast as you can. Try to purple team and be a good partner and get buy-in. One example of this is you don't always have to test things the hardest way possible. The OMG cable is a reminder for me to mention, we had a scenario where a company published an article that said, as a perk to our employees, we're sending them all, I'm changing a few details for privacy's sake, but we're sending everyone this really high quality webcam because everyone's going to work from home. It'll sit on their desk. They'll be able to take all their corporate meetings. It's this publicly available thing we're buying off the shelf and we're sending it to everyone. Yay, pat on the back for us, which is great for an attacker who wants to get a camera and microphone into a bunch of very important people's houses. And so we said, this is a perfect attack vector. Let's go buy the off-the-shelf thing, put a little, literally Alibaba 4G SIM card in it that activates and calls my cell phone when voices are detected, and then it just lets me listen into their conversation. Literally, it was $11. They've pulled it off since. You have to dig a little harder to find it, but this was one of those like low-hanging fruit type deals. So we buy the thing, we put the implant in, we use voting records and political donations because it was an election year. And a fun fact, a lot of people that are higher up at different companies donate a lot of money. And so their home address and their title are all listed in one place. It was wonderful. We also confirmed it with like Wiggle and War Driving just to make sure, because they sent all these, like, I'm going to pick on Microsoft. It's specifically not them, but they sent everyone this router that says Microsoft at home, and then it's broadcasting the SSID. So you can actually map where all the different employees live in the area around the office. And so we found a bunch of important people. And we want to send them these bugs to their house to show that an adversary absolutely could do this. But that's not a good idea because you don't want a random Chinese bug in all of these people's homes. And so what we did is we sent it to ourselves. We took a couple meetings, did a proof of concept. We sent actual devices to the VPs without the implant. They plugged it in, they used it. We have the network logs of the device going online. And we said, we didn't bug you, but we could have. This is what it would have looked like. And that proof of concept was enough. We didn't ruffle any feathers. People were actually excited that we were able to do a proof of concept and that we didn't create a vulnerability by the test. But you don't always have to go all out and cause issues there. All right, so discovering the vulnerability is easy. Figuring out why it exists is hard. But that is the most important thing to actually get it fixed. Figure out the impact of what you're doing. I'll give a really quick example. If you walk up to a front desk, this works way more often than it should. I lost my badge, I lost my phone, I lost my wallet in the taxi. I need to get upstairs so I can get to my laptop to start filing paperwork to get it back. Plus I have a meeting with a really important person in a bit. Cool, we'll give you a temporary badge. You know, you kind of look like the employee that I pulled up on my screen. It works way more than it should. So in your report, you say the security officer was susceptible to impersonation. They gave me a temporary badge. When I claimed to be employee, I didn't have to show ID. That is a very common red team report and vulnerability. But it's going to result in the CISO that hired you or that asked you to do the test yelling at the physical security manager who's now having a bad day, and they're going to yell at the security guard who's going to also have a bad day. And it's not going to really get you anywhere. So what I would say is when you're done with the test, go back, talk to the security guard, and they're going to say, I have 300 standard operating procedures. I don't know if this was a lost badge one or employee victim of robbery or whatever. Plus, I got yelled at last week because I didn't let the VP's sister in because she wouldn't show me ID. And so then when you write your report, you get to say there's too many SOPs, plus we were scolded by leadership. That root cause is going to give the security manager a specific roadmap of what they need to do to make the security guards' life easier and security better. And it gives you the ability to, like everyone in that case is going to have a good day. So your goal is to make sure everyone is comfortable and happy at the end of the assessment. It increases the likelihood that people will actually do things. So I'm going to leave you with this. I want to leave a minute for questions. But the more improvements that you can actually create at your business through testing, the more testing they're going to ask you to do. It is an awesome cycle. And so the more testing, the more improvements, it keeps going. Testing is fun. Seeing things improve is rewarding, and you are at risk of having a fun and rewarding job. Even if it's a little part of your job, it really becomes a cycle where you get to test more and have more fun at work. And so I strongly encourage, take the time, right? It's a lot of the professions with adrenaline, like, policing or EMS or whatever, they're like, for every 5 minutes of action, there's 5 hours of reporting. The same for red teaming, except for it's easy to say, I did the test, I'm going to go write the report and move on to the next thing. The hard part is doing the root cause analysis, talking to all the people after, making sure you're giving really useful roadmaps for how to fix the things that you found, because that's going to get everyone, that's going to help the company improve the security. It's going to help the security team figure out what they need to do, and it's going to help you because then you get to test more. So that's all I got. Awesome. I think I have a few minutes. We'll stay until I get kicked out, and then I'll be outside. So if anyone with questions right now? Yeah, go ahead.
Recently, I have been seeing a lot of facial recognition access control.
Yes.
And most of them are they are related. Just in the front, so you can place magnets.
Yeah.
Do you know when it fixes?
So here we go. So the question was, sounds like there's facial recognition technology where you can just defeat it with a magnet. Better hardware. I don't know the specific hardware that you're talking about, but if a magnet can defeat a latch, you probably need a better latch. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That opens the magnets on the door.
Got it.
Place the magnets in the right place.
Yeah. Yep. There's a fair amount of hardware where that works as well. Yeah, there's a couple of different. I want to see if you have a picture. I'll take a look at it, but you can definitely. There's definitely ways to mitigate magnetic attacks. They're very common. They're less common because most people have figured them out by now, but someone had a question. Yeah, go ahead. Yes. Yeah. So the question was, if you add a second factor, so an individual pin to swiping a badge, it absolutely helps. Sometimes you can still defeat it with an adversary in the middle attack behind it, but the issue with that is it's inconvenient. There's no simple way to implement that where everyone is not mad at you. If you work for a company that is absolutely security first, convenience second, you can implement that, and it is effective when it comes to badge cloning. But there are attacks, especially on external readers, where you can just use the car parked at an angle and try to see someone type in a badge or type in a pin. There's all sorts of attacks, but it makes it significantly harder to get through with 2 factors instead of 1. Any other questions? Yes, please.
Using kind of like publicly available steps to find high value people that they're politically anxious to pay their taxes. Do you do that? I think it's kind of like some cyber hygiene practices like hey, don't use your personal defamation. Like that's obviously doing the right thing for that taking information.
Yeah. Yep. So quickly, the question was, do we recommend cyber hygiene, so political donations, just general privacy related and cyber hygiene things as part of our recommendations? In general, yes, it depends on the scope. Sometimes we need to check a box, so break into our office. And sometimes we truly want to know where our vulnerabilities are. And in those cases, 100%, we try to use at least one example where we do a deep dive on someone. We compromise enough information that we can say, here's a specific example of what we found, here's how we used it, and here's how all your employees should do better at this. So yes, I think it's increasingly important to call that out. Yeah. I think one more and then I'm going to jump off stage.
So you talked about a lot about the different types of door hacks, including compressing air upside down or the extreme thing. I'm surprised that you didn't mention the motion sensors that are up above. We find a lot of the physical exploits are really to be overcome by the glass doors with that gap, and right above is the motion sensor. Same thing, or something you can take through and set that up.
Yep. Yeah, that's a common one. I cut a lot of slides to try to get enough time for questions. But yeah, that's a very common one. You can like throw a hand warmer through some of those. That works great. Deviant has a video spitting whiskey through a door and the cold air of particles sets it off. Yeah, moving those readers down the hall often works, but yes, and minimizing the gaps. But sometimes, yeah, there's plenty of ways to tackle it. But yeah, that's a good call out. Those are a huge pain. So thank you. I appreciate it. I'll be right outside if anyone has more questions. Thank you.